Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'd like to talk about the chart of Louise Hay. Louise Hay just passed away August 30th of 2017. She was a maverick of her time. She brought the whole concept of healing the emotions, healing the mind, healing our thoughts, and through this, healing the body. It was in the 80s that she came up with one of my favorite books, You Can Heal Your Life, which was such a novel, new way of thinking that is it possible that some of the ways that we think or the things that we hold resentments towards can actually cause us to get sick and give us certain diseases? Well, this was the theory and the thought of Louise. And let me just say, she proved it by her own life. It was an amazing story. When she was about 5 or 6, she was raped by a neighbor. And by the time she was 16, she got pregnant and gave her baby girl up for adoption. Consequently, she did not finish high school and then went on to New York to work in some low-paying jobs. But later on, because she's very beautiful, she became a famous model, working for great people in the fashion industry, such as Bill Blass and many others. So Louise continued on with difficulty. And in relationships, her husband left her for another woman. She says that was devastating to her. So she continued on with these very, very difficult patterns, to the point that when she was in her 20s, she developed cervical cancer, incurable. And she decided that she was not going to be taken out by this disease because she felt so strongly that she was not going to take any treatment for her cancer. But instead, she was going to heal herself through healing her emotions, healing her resentments, and all of the things that brought on what she believed this cancer, which was brought on from her belief, from the sexual abuse, and the way to heal it was through forgiveness. And that's exactly what Louise did. She cured her incurable cancer by forgiving those that abused her. And through this process, she went on to help many, many people. And she would have meetings with the victims of AIDS and teaching them the power and healing of forgiveness. Now, with such an amazing life story, there's even a movie out on Louise Hay, and it's worth checking out because this woman was the trendsetter that opened our mind to the truth and what we can do with our body, emotions, and feelings. So with that, I'd like to look at her chart to prove what is in a chart of a woman of this sense of amazing power and ability to heal. So putting her chart up here, Louise has a Cancer ascendant. And with Cancer as her ascendant, the moon becomes the ruler of her chart. It is the most powerful planet in her chart. And her moon resides in the 4th house, which is, of course, the house of home and security. And remember, wherever the moon goes in a chart will reflect where there are the most complications and fluctuations. So looking at Louise's moon, it is conjunct Mercury, and they are together in the sign of Libra. Now, whenever we see Moon and Mercury together, they're actually, they don't work well together. They're not friendly to each other. So and there's a whole myth behind this that we won't go into, but the moon and Mercury really do represent someone who can't stop thinking, can't turn the mind off, because you see, the moon is the mind, while Mercury is the way that we process information in the mind. So you see, Mercury moon is this mind that churns and burns and never rests, never takes time off, always thinking. Now, if you will notice though, her Mercury and her Venus are in what we call parivartana, or mutual reception, meaning they are in each other's signs of rulership. So Mercury being in Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus being in Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So interestingly enough, they exchange to their signs of exaltation, because Venus is in its own sign very, very powerful, not exalted. Venus is exalted in Pisces, but Venus exchanges with the sign Libra, which is extremely strong. And Mercury exchanges with Venus in the sign of Virgo, which is Mercury's sign of exaltation. So this exchange empowers these two planets, because remember, Venus is in the sign of Virgo, which weakens it because it's debilitated in the sign, which Venus is the planet that deals with relationships, and Louise did not have an easy time with relationships at all. And furthermore, with Venus being debilitated, it is with the sun, which is combust, which is another indication of problems with relationships. But recognize that this exchange between Mercury and Venus, between the fourth and the third house, is what gave her such an incredible power of mind, because the third house is the house of courage. It's the house of willpower. And that represents the willpower to work on what? Concepts of our thinking mind. And remember, Mercury even is the planet that rules Gemini, which is the third sign, which is relative to the third house, which is all about the conditions within the mind. But the thinking process that deals with courage and power and force of the mind. And don't forget that the Venus Sun in the sign of Virgo is the sign that deals with healing. So her life was about healing. But don't forget this, that the third house is also the house that deals with writing, with publishing, all forms of communications. So this combination of Venus Sun in the third house is what's given her her ability to write, and to write about healing, since they are in the sign of Virgo. But this exchange with Mercury is also powerful, because this deals with the thinking mind and how we process information. And this is definitely a part of how she healed her life. Now, on top of that, to empower this Venus Sun all the more, Jupiter aspects it. Jupiter is casting a trine from the seventh house to the third house, empowering all the more this Venus-Sun conjunction. And if you will think about the fourth house, where her moon, ruler of her chart, and Mercury reside, and moon, once again, is the power of the mind, and Mercury is the thinking process. The fourth house is a moksha house, and it's a very powerful house because it's an angle. It is a kendra. It is so very powerful. And this particular fourth house, with the workings of the mind, she really got in touch with the power of the fourth house, which is moksha, which is to feel. You see, the moksha houses, which are 4, 8, and 12, deal with spiritual liberation from this world. But these are relative to the water signs. Because remember, the 4th sign is Cancer, the 8th sign is Scorpio, and the 12th sign is Pisces. So what that really is telling me is that in order to be spiritually liberated from this world, to heal, that means we have to feel, because these are the feeling signs, the water signs. These are the feeling houses, and this is the way to our healing. And Louise Hay is definitely the ultimate teacher of healing the body through healing the emotions. It's like if you have an emotion, an anger, a resentment, and it gets stuck in the body because you haven't felt it or processed it or dealt with it, it will arise into some kind of problem physically as a disease. And that's what this whole emphasis of Louise's work, body of work, is all about. So the next thing is, notice that her Jupiter, which is in the 7th house, is debilitated. And a debilitated Jupiter in the 7th house is probably one of the core essences of why she had a failed marriage. Because Jupiter just doesn't do well in the sign of Capricorn. But I will say this, it is retrograde. And when you have a debilitated planet retrograde, it actually becomes like an exalted planet. Generally, after all the issues are worked out in the early part of life, the first part of life, then a planet that is debilitated but retrograde, in the second part of life, there's a healing. There's a healing towards what that planet's about. So she really could work on herself. And don't forget that the 7th house, aside from just marriage and relationships, actually is the 10th house from the 10th house. Therefore, this has to do with career and business. And in the second part of her life, she was incredibly successful on all levels. So let's look now at that fact that Jupiter also rules her 6th house of health and healing. By the fact that if you'll look on her 6th house, it's Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, and she healed herself by the fact that in the second part of life, this Jupiter becomes like an exalted Jupiter, which represents the debilitation is healed. But the debilitated Jupiter, ruler of the 6th house, represents the disease that she took on in the first part of life. Now, notice that K2 is in the 6th house, which is the house of health and healing. And with K2 there, K2 is our spirituality, it is our truth. It is where we feel like something's always missing and we're always getting to the core essence of this. So looking at that, this was K2 as the spiritual essence. She healed her life through her spirituality. And that was not through chemotherapy or drugs. Now, in terms of her successes, let's look at where her Mars is. Because her Mars is in Aries in the 10th house. It's pretty incredible because this is actually what we call, when we have Mars, it's a Mahapurusha Yoga when we have a planet in its own sign or exalted in an angle. This is called a Ruchaka Yoga. So Mars, Ruchaka Yoga in the 10th house is going to deliver career success. This is a given. This is very powerful and empowering for the 10th house. So looking at that, you're going to find that she reached such a pinnacle of success. And when you look at her Saturn, now her Saturn is in the 5th house. The 5th house is the mind, and she had a focus with Saturn there. Also, if you think about the 5th house, it is the house of writing books. Why? Because it's the 3rd house from the 3rd house. And she had a publishing company, and she sold about 50 million books in the up to this point in day on how you can heal your life. So Louise Hay was totally successful. And if you will notice, her moon and Mars are opposing one another. This is called a Chandra Mangala Yoga. And almost always when you have a Chandra Mangala Yoga, which simply means Moon Mars Yoga, it creates success in business. Now, it doesn't usually do any favors for you in your relationship with your mother, but it always creates some type of opportunities for success in career. And if you'll notice, they drape across the 10th and the 4th house. So Mars being in the 10th and the Moon being in the 4th, this is career success. But Chandra Mangala Yoga is not generally very good for marriage either. Why? Because we have Mars 7th from the Moon. So this was another indicator that relationships really were not meant to work out, or she wasn't destined for happy living forever after in a marriage. Now, also realize that with Saturn being in the 5th house and Mars aspecting the 5th house by its 8th aspect, Mars has special aspect is 4 and 8, it's aspecting the 5th house and Saturn. Well, with these two first-rate malefics, natural malefics, aspecting the 5th house, she consequently didn't raise any children. She had to give her child up for adoption. So that's what you'll find in the area, recognizing that the 5th house can represent children. But the 5th house is writing books, and the ruler of the 5th, which is Mars, is in the 10th, career success through writing and creativity. Now, that we have really looked at this, I mean, her Mars not only, her Mars is off the charts. It's so powerful because it not only is it in a Chandra Mangala Yoga, and it is the ruler of the 5th, but don't forget, and it's a Ruchaka Yoga by being in an angle in its own sign, it's also Yoga Karaka planet. What is the Yoga Karaka planet? It's when a planet all by itself rules a triconal house, which a triconal house is 1, 5, and 9, and it also rules an angular house or a Kendra, which the angular houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10. And Mars rules the 10th house, which is an angle, and it rules the 5th house, which is a triconal. This is her best planet in the 10th house, so of course she's had incredible opportunities for career success. But I just want to close and say Louise Hay was such an inspiration and such a maverick of her time. She really took to heart and proved the power of forgiveness and that it can heal all, the power of love. And she's an example how to really address our inner feelings. In order to feel, we must heal, or to heal, we must feel. Her courage and strength to stand up to opposition, because heaven knows the world told her she was crazy, but she knew she was right. She did it. She healed herself. Her life was a testament to her beliefs and these powers that are absolutely real. And So she took obstacles and turned them into opportunities, and healed and taught the world how powerful this is. So I want to just give praise and thanks to everything that Louise gave us in this world to help heal humanity, to help us open our heart and understand this true reality. She opened up a whole nother dimension of healing. If we will take this lesson and her teachings and learn from them, we can do the same. Louise Hay, you are a great inspiration to mankind, and your mission is complete to not only heal yourself, but to help heal the world. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information concerning transcripts to this video, you can always go to my magazine, which is astrologicmagazine.com. And if you would like more information on me, you can go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. And I have a university. If you would like to learn Vedic astrology and learn how to interpret charts as I do, go to my university, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.